This episode of the Beauty Industry podcast was brought to you by Asada Mineral Cosmetics and Clinical Skincare. Hello and welcome to the Beauty Industry podcast, your online support community for the professional beauty industry. I am your host, founding director of Beauty Industry, Tamara Reid. Here, we are closing the competitive gap and speaking your language. This is a platform created and dedicated to the professional beauty industry, valuing community over competition. We serve to help connect you with inspiration from industry experts, expand your knowledge through educational pieces, and bring you the latest in product and technology innovation. This is Beauty Industry. Today, my guest is Lan Nguyen Grealis, makeup artist and educator. When you're a creative who draws inspiration from art, culture, history, and life itself, it's a little hard to entice the creative juices to flow when you're looking at the same four walls day in and day out, living the life of lockdown in a global pandemic. So, how do you muster up the motivation to self-inspire? We ask Lan on today's episode. Born in Ireland from a Vietnamese origin, Lan has become an established name in the fashion and beauty industry. Lan comes from an art background, having studied fashion at Central St. Martin's. Self-taught in makeup, she pursued her career to heading and designing key shows and is a regular name at London Fashion Week. Lan has contributed to various editorials including Vogue Russia, Vanity Fair, Elle UK, Glamour, Grazia, Stylist and Stella. Lan is a published author and a regular speaker and a teacher, so she wears many, many hats. Known for her creative flair and natural use of colours and textures combined with flawless skin, Lan is always collaborating on creative projects, some of which she shares how she has done in the light of lockdown in today's conversation. Here's Lan and I for Beauty Industry.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. I really, really appreciate it. Can I ask, what time is it over where you are?
It is currently 7:05 a.m.
Ah, thank you. Have you had a coffee yet?
No, I've literally just rolled out of bed to get up to chat to you.
I appreciate you even more.
It's okay. I'll have it afterwards.
Double shot espresso, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
So tell me then, we start our conversations the same way each week by taking a look at our guest career and how they actually entered into the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So let's explore that first. How did beauty and aesthetics and makeup kind of come into your eye line?
Well, my background is in art. I've always done art as a kid, but I did fashion design. And it's during my third year, I had a bit of an accident where my ceiling collapsed and destroyed all my work. So, it was on my third year and I was supposed to submit it in the next day. And then I was going to do a whole work experience in one of the big fashion houses. But I'd literally just got off the floor from designing, drawing, making all my dresses and everything, went for have a coffee and heard this massive bang. And thought, that's a bit strange. And went back upstairs and opened the door and it was pitch black. Everything was destroyed. It was just a big smog of smoke. And it was a case of, a dog ate my homework type thing scenario. So I was only 19 at the time. So I was pretty scared that no one would believe me. And I must have just shut down really. Just left my mum to deal with it. Went on holiday for 2 weeks, came back and started my life again. And that's where I fell into a little PR role, just like as a coffee girl. And I was offered a job at a photographic studio. And that was my opening. I was surrounded by people who did makeup, did hair, sales, photography, styling, everything. And my job was to go around and make people feel comfortable, make sure that they were happy. And I just got to know so many people that the managers thought, we're really short-staffed. You look like someone who could do makeup. So here's some brushes, off you go. And that was it. I ended up starting right on the job, did makeup and just put myself in the client's shoes and thought, what would you like? did the makeup, and they were super happy. And that was about maybe nearly 20 years ago now. And I haven't stopped from that day. So
Wow.
it's meant to be.
Oh my goodness. What a story.
Yeah. Yeah. But bearing in mind, there was no social media. There was maybe a handful of schools. It wasn't a promoted industry. It was very hidden. You'd always see the glam of, famous people and things like that, but you never knew anything behind it. And obviously, I just followed wherever the opportunities came. And from there, I met a photographer who took me to Paris, where I was then immersed in like Couture Fashion Week. And I guess that was where the beginning of my passion sort of came about, because I was surrounded by the whole glam, the whole backstage experience. And I never knew, like, years later, that's where I would be. But, when I look back at my story, it's like, oh, it was meant to be. All that sort of information, that experience, really lent itself for me being successful, I suppose, because there was no one. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't assist. I'm self-taught. And I learned on the job, basically. So anywhere I went, there was always somebody who said, what do you do? I did a bit of makeup. Okay, come and work for me. So there was always that conversation. So I guess it was the networking that helped me, and the people skills, I guess, helped me move along, And I've never been out of work. It's since the pandemic. The pandemic was the first time I ever stopped working for that long. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, so much there. I think it takes probably a very special type of person to have all of their work be collapsed, to go on a little break and to come back and still have the drive, and kind of pivot. We know what the word pivot is now because we've been doing it for the last 2 years, particularly.
Mm-hmm.
But all of those years ago, to have that courage and to get that energy to pivot, I don't think that everybody could have been able to do that. So hats off to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was very stressful. And I have to say, like, that whole constant fighting and stuff and struggling, I guess has made me a stronger person. Like I'm quite a positive person, but also I like to problem solve. And anytime there's a problem, I'm not the type of person to get depressed or anything. I try to go, okay, if that's not going to work, what else can I do? And it's always like putting value on yourself, knowing that you can do a job. And if you're not given the opportunity, then it's like, maybe it's not meant to be. So I'll try something else. So I've always had that in me, I guess, because it is a tough industry in general everywhere, I suppose. But, when you get your knockbacks, it's very easy to let it get to you and break your confidence. But because I was always so focused on like, oh, I've got this great idea. Okay, someone's not listening. Well, fine, I'll try it anyway, just to see, because I'm a type of person with no regrets. I think it's really important because I've always been surrounded, it's quite a negative industry sometimes, because it's not only physical, it's visual. So if you're not thick-headed and strong-minded and believe in your ideas that they will work, it can be soul destroying. But I'm a type of person, I prepare anyway, so I always try things out first, then I test the market, and then I do it. So I don't just jump in for no reason. It's like any idea I would have had, I would have spent, it could be days, months, years, maybe planning it in the back of my head. And when the opportunity arises, then I sort of go, oh yeah, actually, this will work. And I think that's where that whole confidence comes from. It's not from just turning up thinking, yeah, I'm amazing. It's more like, oh, actually, I've done the background, I've done the research, I've done the practice, I've tested it, I know it's going to work, just give me that chance. And that's where I spent, I guess, most of my life presenting and pitching, because I know my ideas have worked, or I've tested them out. So that's how I've made things happen. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. I think as artists and even as estheticians, just in our four walls, our industry can be very isolating, particularly when you're a business owner. And as you were saying before, it can be somewhat negative. Sometimes we feel very competitive, with our peers and with our colleagues. Has that aspect ever kind of got you down, or, have you mentioned before, you're quite good at putting yourself out there and networking and meeting a lot of people. Have you just kind of combated that with that, well, I'm just going to say hi to everyone and hopefully it lands?
Well, yeah, that was the beginning. I think when you're younger, I have to say, when you're stepping into it, you have no fear. And it's almost that childlike of mentality where you're like, yeah, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for it. But as time goes on and you sort of move into like maybe into, I'd say after maybe 10, 12 years where you feel like you've done the graft and then you're like in a bit of a zone where you think, oh, actually nothing's happening. Then you start getting negative and you think, oh, you get to a point where maybe you haven't stretched far enough or you haven't pivoted far enough or you haven't tried something else and you've sort of outdone yourself, you've outgrown your position. And having that sort of motivation to know and recognize that you've outgrown yourself in a way that you need to update your skills, you need to reach to new people, that people are saying no. I've been through elements where I've had, I can't name names, but there's been negative aspects where a company tried to steal my work and I went through 4 years of legal lawsuits and stuff like that. And it was very tough mentally because financially, I was getting by, but then to use all your money to deal with legal lawyers and stuff just to protect your own name when you haven't gone out to do anything particular, but to live your life. And there's people that have come in to try and take it from you. It was a very hard lesson for me. It just meant that I had to really protect myself. But I learned everything about IP law, intellectual property, understanding about protecting my name, making sure everything's written in the email, everything's recorded, because it's so easy for people to promise you things and not follow through. So I've been burnt quite a few times. So that was disheartening because during that period of time, I was working so hard around the clock to pay for my wedding. And then, I got pregnant, and then to have all this sort of stuff happening while you're trying to set up your business and do all these different things. I was writing my book. It was really, really tough going. But I was lucky because I had loads of friends that were supportive. The fact that I didn't let them win was also a big thing, because one of the biggest advice I was giving as a creative and a business owner is that, you are the brains, you are one person. It is you that have come up with it, so no one else has. So you can do it again. Let people try and take it. It's like at the end of the day, they're not you. So just always remember, the more successful you are, that's the better sweet revenge, And when I started realizing that, I was like, yeah, that's true. I am one person. I did start up. I did build up my name. People can try and take it, but they're not me. So yeah, I'll do it again. So
Absolutely.
they're not going to take me down. And I think where people do, I think as business owners, you have to realize that there's always going to be haters. There's always going to be people that are jealous. It could be in your closest network of friends. You will lose people. And I never understood why, when someone told me, someone very successful said to me, like the further up the chain you get, the more hated you'll become and the less friends you'll have. And I just couldn't fathom that idea, because I've always grown around a big social network, lots of friends. I've always helped people. I've done so much charity work. I've lifted a lot of assistance. I've helped people in all sorts of ways. And I just didn't realize, the more successful you are, the more problems you would have in that area of people not wanting to help you because you are successful. And I think that's probably one of the heartbreaking things, I suppose, mentally, that affects me. But I realized you have to be around other people who want to support you. So again, I've had to change my mindset to like, okay, only surround yourself with people that actually want you to succeed and have a positive impact on you rather than anyone negative. So yeah, it's, as you go up, you're constantly battling that.
Absolutely. That somebody once said, and it's the same as yours, but the higher you climb, the windier it gets. The higher you climb, the climb doesn't get easier. It gets more difficult, and you know how to take that next step, but then a huge gust of wind comes along and it's really difficult. And I'm too have been through the IP ringer. I've just paid close to $20,000, which would be, approximately like £10,000, £11,000.
Yeah.
And God, it's soul destroying, isn't it? I
It's
mean, your
it's
profit
so
that you work so hard for, and then you're
mm,
like, oh, here, let's just handball that to a lawyer, for an email. It's so painful.
that's right. Yeah, it's so tiring, and I don't think people realize what it takes when you start setting up your business, of the legal aspect of it, which is so
Mm,
expensive. Yeah, I mean, I spent close to 60 grand.
mm,
That should have been my house. I was
yeah.
very upset. And then, I've had it a few times, but as I've got stronger, more wiser, I protected myself. I was able to go
Mm,
to the right lawyer straight away. Um, and people don't realize like how tiring it is,
it's
and the
exhausting.
costs of it. Yeah, yeah.
Mm, mm. You mentioned before social media and having mentors and things like that. And it now feels like
Mm.
everywhere we look in our industry, there's a new expert, there's a new mentor, to kind of follow along.
Mm.
Obviously, that's something that has changed hugely in the industry. But I'm wondering how you've noticed the landscape of makeup artists and the creative space change since you first started.
Um, Obviously, when I first started, the higher end luxury market and being backstage, you would have been sacked from a job if you showcased anything from behind the scenes. So it is, as I've seen it from no social media to social media, it's basically put some of the backstage people in the forefront as celebrities, um, there's no escaping. I mean, I think that's why I loved doing shows, because when you're doing shows, there's no retouching. It's quite raw. People come, people see backstage shots. It's as you see it happening, um, and it shows the skill set of the makeup artist. Um, but also at the same time, you're seeing a false in social media where they do retouch, and you have influencers and people like that sort of showcasing things that are not necessarily reality, or airbrushing, and where people are believing that that is real life, when actually backstage has now become front stage in essence. So the backstage pictures are becoming more glamorous, more retouched, things are set up, and it's quite tough because people on the outside looking in will think that's normal, it's glamorous, but actually the graft work is not glamorous at all. It's long hours. It could be 16 hours, it could be 3 days on the trot, just trying to get an image or trying to get that campaign shot. And there's like could be 20 people to 60 people on set just to get that one shot. So in one way, it's good that people can see how hard it is and how it's working. But on the flip side, there's a lot of mental things occurring, mental health awareness occurring, because people are not realizing, I guess, that that's not real either. It's trying to understand what's real and what's not.
Mm,
I was, only because I had people try and pass off my work as their own, was when I started sharing my work backstage, because and behind the scenes, and how things looked before they presented themselves on the cover of the magazine or anything, because I liked showing things just as they were, like when I did them, because it showed there's no retouching, or it just showed the skill of makeup or what was happening. And I remember people saying to me, "Oh, you shouldn't show people what you're doing, because then they'll just copy you." But I'm like, well, it's okay if they copy, because you take that as a compliment. But also, once I've done it, I'm not going to recreate it again.
mm,
It's about moving forward. So it doesn't matter if they see it. I've already passed it. So by the time I release something, I'm already on to the next project. So I'm not worried about people stealing or whatever. It's like, well, I was first, I did it, so put it out there. So at least there's that trademark, that I did put it out there, and I don't have to have millions of followers, because at the end of the
mm,
day, it's there already. So yeah, there has been a massive change in that way. But also people understand what we do now, I guess.
mm.
There's more appreciation for the grafters behind the scenes, and it's good. I think that's why you see an influx of reality TV shows and things like that, because normal people at home will relate to it, where they're not working in our industry. They now get to see it. You can look on Google, you can see backstage photos, and it's opening up for people to learn more about the other career steps behind the scenes.
After the break, Lan speaks to aligning yourself with people who have the same vision as you do. But first, a word from today's beauty partner. Community speaking about makeup, Asada Mineral Cosmetics has been at the forefront of high-quality, talc-free mineral makeup in Australia for over 15 years. And if you hadn't heard the news, Asada has now launched a range of advanced cosmeceutical skincare. Asada Clinical Formula has been developed and tested in a skin clinic to ensure its efficacy in the professional treatments and as a sought-after home care retail range. Each skincare product has been formulated with high-performance actives, vitamins, antioxidants, probiotics, and plant extracts for optimal skin health. To learn more about how the Asada mineral makeup and skincare range can benefit your clinic or salon, visit www.asada.com today. Thank you so much to the team at Asada for making this episode of the Beauty Industry podcast possible. And now, back to Lan. You were saying before about, your strategy kind of when you are thinking about something and then you put a lot of work into it and you research it and, map it out in your mind for a couple of months or even years, and then you kind of execute it. Do you ever lead with the heart or just lead with the gut and just think, an idea comes into your head and you go, I have to do this now. Like there's no time to put in the strategy behind it. Like, let's just go.
Yeah, I've always got an element of that for every shoot, every job I do. I always leave an open window for my gut. I'll always have an idea, but I'm never set on such an idea unless it's like something that I'm doing, like my book or anything. But being creative, you have to be open to accidents, and because accidents can also give you something you'd never expect, but also it's a way of modernizing yourself and being new. So it's always a gut thing. I always find that when I've double guessed myself and not listened to my gut, I'm always right. I always end up kicking myself afterwards, going, oh my God, I should have just done it. But I've done it so many times that I've learned to, just roll with it, be calm, just be prepared for anything, keep an open mind and just see where it goes, and I'm always open for collaboration. And when people say, oh, what are you going to do? I'm always like, I don't know. I'll see when I start, because it's like painting. You've got an end vision. You sort of know where you're going, but it's like how you're getting there. You just don't know. And I've always applied that to my work, but also to when I'm teaching, educating young artists as well. It's like, I'm going to show you the skills, but it's up to you how you use them. Just as long as you listen to your gut, and if it looks good to you and you've done your best, then that's it. I can come in and help and critique you afterwards, but you've got to get to a point where there's nowhere else you can do. You've done everything you could possibly do, all your ideas or whatever. And then it'll be down to you learning and picking up something new from somebody else, or then there's always room for learning. And I think that's how you keep an open mind to learn something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Every day is it's like going back to school. I always feel like if we wake up and we feel like we can't learn something today, then we're probably in the wrong industry or the wrong mind frame, and we need to kind of go back to bed and wake up again.
Yeah, I think the worst thing could ever happen. I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there, they have no choice, waking up, going to work, and they have to. Yeah, I have to, but I also choose what I want to do, which is quite nice. There's always upside downsides, and like being freelance, you never know where your next job is coming. So there's that element of like, oh yeah, I have to do it. But it's just so much fun because you just know 2 days are the same. It doesn't matter if you're going to the same studio. You're always meeting new people, and that's what I love about it. So yeah, I guess it's probably one of these things like you're waking up to do the job, but you really love the job, so it just makes it a bit easier.
Absolutely. I'm curious, how important is it for you to stay in touch with your creative side, and do you do anything, to kind of entertain that or to get inspiration?
I always get inspiration from other, like from films or music. I find like music always touches me in a way and always makes me feel like I want to do something and it takes me to a different world. So, I mean, my mind, when you're creative, your mind goes all over the place. It could take just one image to make you go and look for loads of different other things. But I think the more important thing is that I'm always physically doing it. If I'm not physically doing it, then I'm watching other people do it. It's just always keeping myself surrounded by the industry. So, you know, I like to sort of dip in and out of it as well. So I'm not consumed by it. So I get a balance, because if you're so consumed by it, you just get so lost in an area and you don't have your mind open to other things. So I always like, spend time with my friends, go out, I switch off, watch a really rom-com or, documentary or something, or I learn about other people. So then that usually inspires me. Just being around in the moment, looking at what other people are doing, but also I don't tend to look at other makeup artists as such, because that's what I do. So I don't want to be affected and think, I wish I could do that, or I want to do that. I find that can be a bit of one of these things where if you're looking at other people that are doing what you're doing, you suddenly put yourself off track of what you're doing, because nobody's the same, and you can't be doing what everyone else is doing. Otherwise you're just like them. So I try to look at like movie directors or celebrities and see what they're doing, because they're opposites. So then it feels like something new, and you end up getting a different spin on it.
It's kind of like when you spend so much time with your partner and then all of a sudden you've got the same language, if you keep on looking at other people's work, you will just by default start to, imitate or mimic their work, because that's all you've been looking at.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So obviously we've had a pandemic. We're still going through a pandemic. Freelancer life is pretty tough. What are some of the challenges that you've navigated across your career, or in the short kind of time span that we've been in during this COVID craziness that kind of come to life, and I'm curious to know how you have navigated them. It seems like you're quite a resilient person. You've got a lot of energy in the tank. So can you share that with us?
At the beginning, just during the pandemic, when things were starting to happen, I had already done a trip away, came back. I was on a film set and I was working, and as soon as they were announcing that something was in the air, I straight away started doing, like, throwing everything out, sanitizing. I mean, you do it anyway, but I just did a fresh new kit. I started looking at other ways of being a bit safer. I spoke to my friend who was a biologist, and I started to just delve more into what a virus was all about. Even though, as an artist, you're trained in to be hygienic and stuff. We are like, really safe in that way. I just had to be extra careful. So I started like getting all the new materials, the gloves, the mask, researching on things like that. But then also I thought, well, okay, if I'm not going to be able to physically work, what else am I going to do? So, overnight, the work disappeared. I had like the whole year booked out already. And it was hard to see, because, I had 40 days booked in, and literally within 2 days, all of that was just wiped out. And then when you're limited, self-employed, limited company, you get no help or anything like that. There was nothing. It was like, oh my God. And then I had companies go in liquidation. So again, I wasn't paid. So I forfeited a lot of money. And so, but to keep going, I was like, well, I still want to shoot. I could do it through FaceTime. I can do it, I can teach, because at the end of the day, from doing fashion shows, I realized that I physically didn't do the makeup. I was always directing and telling people what to do. I did the demonstration, but then my whole team used to do the makeup. So I physically wasn't doing it. So I was able to convince some clients, like, okay, well, I physically am not allowed to do it. I have a mask, but I can direct the model to do it. You can have me in there and I'll design the look, but then you can still physically shoot, because, so we started doing a few editorials through FaceTime. People were doing it remotely. So that was interesting. And then it got to the point where, okay, now what else I'm going to do? I'm homeschooling. But then I started like, I've got canvases, I've got paintbrushes, I'm just going to paint. just to get out of it. And I just like started painting. I saw a picture that this photographer took, and I thought, oh, I really like this image. And I started painting. And, it was 10 years. It's been 10 years since I last did an oil painting. And I realized, it was so much fun. So then I started creating artwork. And then I had a few people that commissioned me to do stuff. And at the same time, I was trying to raise morale and help with the NHS. So we started doing Zoom tutorials and lessons over the phone. So I kept quite busy. But then it got to a lull where it was like, okay, this is happening. This has gone on long enough now. Our industry is really screwed. What am I going to do? I couldn't go out and get a normal job or work in the retail or anything because I had a child. But also, I fell pregnant, so it wasn't safe. So my husband, luckily he carried on working. He was in construction, so he was in houses, so there's nobody there anyway, so he could work. But a lot of his job obviously dropped as well. So financially, it was quite tough on mortgage payments and things. But then we started fighting for our industry to open up again. So again, I was quite prolific in terms of fighting for like, hey, we're really good at what we do. We're really safe. If they're opening up other people that can work, why can't we work in a safe environment? So I spent the whole summer working with the British Beauty Council to try and convince the government, like, either we get compensated or, let the salons open up and work and stuff like that. So again, that took up about 70% of my time coming up with ideas on how are we going to campaign for this. It was quite tough because a lot of people disrespected us in terms of like, well, find a different job, and it was like, I don't want to find a different job. We're actually really important for people's mental health. And I think, there's a whole thing about people doing it themselves, people learning how to do their own makeup and their own hair and stuff. And there was that sort of fear that people didn't need us anymore. But then as things started to open up, with celebrities and things like that, they realized obviously they did need us, that there was a certain element that they wanted our skills. Obviously film carried on working because of the, entertainment, people are on Netflix more. And so, I think it really helped to show that, it was a skill that should have been recognized. So eventually, we were included into, ways of getting government help. But then towards the end, we're still in sort of lockdown, I guess, because I have to get tested, weekly with the PCR test. And then for traveling, we're not traveling as much. So it's tiring. It got to a mental block where, okay, we're social people and we haven't been around anybody. I have loads of people that I know of that have, given up, depressed, shut down. The business hadn't survived. Even my accountant was like, just why don't you just close your company and just start again? I'm just like, no. I said, there has to be a way. I don't want to. So, I set up my own podcast during, earlier this year. I was like, I just want to do something. I need to raise a voice of what we do, of how important our industry is. And I thought, I'm not going to give up. Loads of people are like sort of pivoted doing their own thing. But I was like, no, I still want to keep that message going that, art and makeup, is really important. What we do is really important. We really do change lives. And so that's kept me motivated. So I'm constantly trying to think of new ways. And it's only because, I'm finding new ideas, new collaborations that it's sort of got me going. But I got into a depressive state, I guess, when I had to do homeschooling and trying to figure out what I was going to do financially, but once I took control of it and snapped out of it and said, look, everyone's going through this. I just have to stay positive. That's all it was. At the moment, it's a matter of mindset of just staying positive, just try and do what it takes to make yourself happy, whatever it is, just be happy and just pull yourself together and start just doing it bit by bit. Just, I mean, yeah, just take a break. There's now I take a break a lot. It's tiring when you've spent the whole year sort of almost half asleep doing the same rigmarole. It's like Groundhog Day. And so I think it's taken its toll mentally because I'm so tired. But I'm finding new ways to just get up and motivate myself. Yeah.
Oh, good on you. It has been exhausting. It's funny that it's exhausting to be doing nothing.
Yeah.
And when in our industry we're so used to seeing so many people a day and having so many different conversations and being on your feet doing the 16-hour days. As a business owner, you're doing 26 hours a day. You're constantly going and when we stop, we're kind of like, oh, okay. And I think as humans, we really associate ourselves with what we do. I'm Tamara, I run beauty industry, I do this, I do that. And then it's like when that business is taken away from you, you kind of have this self-identity crisis of like, well, if I'm not doing makeup, then who am I? And then you've got all of this inward reflection happening and Netflix is on and it's really full on. But I love what you're saying there, because we are doing the same thing in Australia. The beauty aesthetics and creative artistry world have sanitized, have cleaned since the dawn of time. This is our jam. This is what we do. You aside from nurses and doctors, like we are so clean. And I love that campaign that you guys did with the British Beauty Council. We're actually chatting to them in an upcoming episode because it's so nice to see that rise. I think we watched Netflix and sat on the couch and had wine and chocky for a good time, and then we were like, no, let's get up, let's be loud, and let's do this. So good on you for taking that initiative.
Yeah, thank you. No, it was one of these things, and I made a lot of new friends, a lot of great new friends with makeup artists, and it was nice to see everyone rally together and support each other. So I got to know loads of people that I never would have got to know if it wasn't for the pandemic. So that's what came out of it as well. So and I have a new platform, new business happening, where it's I've now created a hub, a community in the heart of Mayfair, for artists to come and be able to set up the business within my business, and then also for me to offer them work as well. So we've just never had that sort of community. Makeup artists have always been lone rangers. We collaborate in teams, but our teams are generally a hairdresser, a stylist, a photographer, a director, a journalist. And then if you do shows, then you've got your assistants, etc. But you never have, top makeup artists working together or sort of being together or collaborating and stuff. And I've started to open up the doors to work with other makeup artists that are in my field and to collaborate, just to help raise the awareness, that to get everybody being in a positive area and just to show the expertise and just help each other. It's like it was always strange that makeup artistry was never a community in that way. We all go to events. That's the only time you'd meet other makeup artists is like for brand launches and things. But I was like, oh, actually, why don't we sort of hold hands together? And at the end of the day, you do what you do, I do what I do, clients, whatever, like if I have a client, I'll recommend you. You have a client, you recommend me. That's the way I've always sort of saw myself. And I've got really close friends who are great makeup artists, but I just sort of, after the pandemic, I just opened up to like, actually, let my guard down a bit and work with other amazing makeup artists as well and align myself around that circle. So I'm trying now is to create that hub here in London.
Yeah, good on you. You'll get there, I know for sure. I'm interested, just to hold on to a little bit of hope and faith. And I'm curious to know what excites you for the future of our industry.
I guess, it's always been exciting when there's new products have always launched. I feel like people have really thought about what they're launching, what they're making. I think there's more, it's not fast makeup anymore. People are slowing down, they're actually being thoughtful. I'm excited about how they're helping their environment a bit more. And also, I feel like I'm excited about real people understanding what we do now. And it's quite nice to see that the respect that there is for our industry. And that's what excites me most, because if you talk to anybody or your friends, what makeup artist do you know? Or, they'd be like, there wasn't much of an interest on who is the person that created the brand, or, it's all about, the glamorization of it. But it feels like people have taken appreciation of what people do in our beauty industry. And I feel like there's more storytelling, there's more sharing. So to see all that open up, it's quite nice. And I'm really excited to see it like open up further, and people sort of doing amazing collaborations and things.
Yeah, for sure. Lan, thank you so much for coming and having a chat with me this morning. You've been such a delight, and, really honest and transparent and vulnerable with your answers. And I really, really appreciate all of that. It's been such a difficult couple of years. And I think your voice of resilience and hope has certainly given our audience a little bit more fight in their day. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I'm so here for the point that Lan finished on, where our industry is receiving more credit where credit is due. And honestly, it is about bloody time, right? The future of the industry relies on you and how you show up every single day. If you choose to entertain the negative narrative of a competitive industry, then that is what our industry will give you back. But if you relish collaboration and community, then it's going to be a much better place for us currently in it and the future who are rising up. No doubt you are already one of Lan's thousands of followers, but if you're not, you can check her out on the gram at Lan's London to see more of her creative looks. And hey, while you're there, let me know what you thought of today's conversation about creatives by sliding into my DMs at Tamara Reid Beauty, or by giving us a follow at Beauty Industry. Until next time, stay connected.